So there's so much material for Passover. I mean, I'm sure you guys sense this because I keep saying it. And I hope I'm not trying to pack in too much today, but it's also interesting that I just can't help myself.
Go for it. Remember, we're students by choice. Our parents are enforcing us to go to Hebrew lessons on Friday morning.
Right.
We're here of our own volition.
Good, thank you. And yes, I don't have to, play games or feed you to get you to come. I know. So,
I don't know. Games are always fun.
well, this is true. But anyway, okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Yes, this. So, in the JTS website, it's incredible what's there. And I found that what did I search? I think I searched the 10th plague. I've searched all kinds of things, but ultimately, anyway, this is, and I'm going to lose my place, but a guide to Jewish religious practice, just the sections on Pesach. They posted it online. So, my old book that I've been reading to you from, we can look here. So we're not going to read all of it, but I wanted to, and we've already done a little bit of some of this, but here, preliminary, here we go. So I wanted to talk about something that I didn't know until I started writing my own Haggadah, which you keep hearing about, that there is actually, some people think, a very set order or way that the Seder plate is arranged, which I didn't have any appreciation for. I grew up, we had many Seder plates, different ones over the years. And then I got married and I got some as wedding gifts, and my parents had a major anniversary and we bought them a different one. And, their Seder plates can be collectibles and beautiful. And sometimes you like to try different things. But anyway, so, we know there have to be certain things on the Seder plate, obviously. So here we go. The Seder plate containing 3 matzahs, bitter herbs, charoset, parsley, another vegetable, and the shank bone and the roasted egg, right? And they say you place it before the one who's conducting the Seder. So interesting, they say containing 3 matzot. So my Seder plate growing up did not have a place to put the 3 matzahs. We had a beautiful handmade in Russia, we think, by one of my paternal grandmothers. A beautiful, there's a big round circle that was embroidered, and it covered 3 slots that it had inside with a different fabric for the 3 matzot. And that's what we always used. And it sat on its own large plate right next to the Seder plate. I now have, and have had for probably 20 some odd years, my Seder plate sits atop a 3-tiered little stand, and it has a little skirt around it, and the 3 matzots sit inside that stand with the Seder plate sitting on top. When I take all this out, maybe I'll send you pictures, but obviously I haven't unpacked any of it because it's too soon. Okay, so in accordance with the principle that one should not pass over a mitzvah when he meets it, the foods on the Seder plate are so arranged that the first one to be used is nearest to the leader of the Seder, the next one, and so on and so on. So the arrangement is the top right, the zeroa, the shank bone, the top left, the egg, the roasted egg, the center is the maror, the lower right is the charoset, and the lower left is the karpas, the parsley. So there are diagrams of this that you can find in certain Haggadot that go into a lot of detail. It's kind of a little bit of an overkill, but this is just something that I didn't really think about or appreciate until I started to write my own. So all the printed Haggadahs have 15 words which trace the sequence of the Seder service, right? That's the Seder order, right? They're in an order and we sing a song, right? So give me half a second and I will. So here we go, right? Kadesh or Chatz. Can you see this well enough? Is it big enough?
You can make it a little larger.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I see faces saying no.
I can see it.
Yeah, but let's see if I can, sorry, I have to zoom plus. It's
I wonder if we can blow
not
it.
responding. Let's see if I can do it this way.
Gosh.
I'm sorry,
We
ladies, but
can
it
do it
doesn't,
ourselves, you know.
Yeah.
can you? Okay.
Ourselves.
I think because what I'm in, it's just not really responding. Okay, so Kadesh or
There it is.
Chatz, Karpas,
Okay.
Yachatz. So it is a mnemonic, right? There's a certain, well.
Rhyming to it.
Rhyming, thank you, yes. Magid rachza motzi matzah. Maror korech shulchan orech. Safon barech halel nirtza. So yes, there's a song to it. But honestly, I have so much material that I don't want to spend time singing, if that's okay. Okay, so let's go back.
Give me a taste. Come on, Rachel. Just give me a little taste.
Oh, golly.
It's good fast.
Marlene, can you help me with this? Who knows how to sing this?
Oh, unfortunately.
Okay,
We
that's
can all do it. I can help a little.
Okay, help me. Yeah, so Kadesh or
No, I don't do it.
Karpas
Yeah.
Yachatz
Mama.
Magi Rachza Motzi Matzah. Is that the right tune?
I don't do that.
For a few minutes. Are you ready
What's
to
your
go?
I
tune?
don't know that one.
Connie, you sing.
Okay.
Sorry, I have to leave.
I have a strep
Okay.
throat, but
Bye, Marsh.
Kadesh or Chatz, Karpas Yachatz, Magi Ratza, Motzi Matzah, Mabror Korech, Safun Barech, Halel, Natzi Nirtza.
Okay, I don't know.
Hey,
that.
Connie.
all
And the
right.
emotions at like Jewish day schools, they teach the kids to do all.
I
the
don't think I've ever heard that.
That's really cool. I obviously didn't go to Jewish day school.
That's very cool. I like that. Thank you. Thank you. That's excellent.
I
Okay,
have a
well,
terrible voice and a very sore throat, but.
No, you
No,
rocked it.
fine. I got the point. Thank you.
okay, so if we go back here, so that's the order. And now, so Kadesh, some of these, I don't think we have to get too far into this, but all our festivals, we start with, right, a bracha. So we have Kiddush. It consists of 3 benedictions, one over the wine, the second over the festival, and then the Shechecheyanu. So Shabbat, obviously, we add appropriate Shabbat references. Saturday night, before Shechecheyanu, we insert a special Havdalah that consists of 2 benedictions. So it's very uncommon for Pesach to start on Saturday night. And there's a reason for that. The rabbis know how difficult it is to get ready for Pesach. And here you'd have to get ready even earlier because you have to do everything before Shabbat starts. And then as soon as Shabbat ends, you go right into Seder. So it's very uncommon. Okay, so the 4 cups of wine. Let's see, many explanations have been given for the 4 cups of wine. They are said to be, this is a typo, look at that, to be symbolic of the 4 synonymous expressions for redemption used by Scripture, or of the 4 monarchies, which are to precede the final redemption, or of the 4 figurative cups of punishment, which the empire of godlessness is to drain before the event, while the 4 cups of comfort are administered to Israel. I hadn't heard that last one. But so the symbolic or synonymous expressions of redemption, right? I will take you out, I will lead you, I will, I'm going to forget them. But that's what I heard the most. That's what I was taught. A modern commentator has proposed a more simple reason for the 4 cups. Every Shabbat and festival, we have 2 cups of wine at the meal, one for Kiddush and one for Birkat Hamazon. Since the Haggadah has 2 more benedictions, one concluding the first part of the Haggadah and one concluding the second part, 2 more cups were added. That's very simple. Then, of course, but we have the cup of Elijah. So the question arose whether a 5th cup of wine should be drunk at the Seder. After the Hallel, okay, corresponding to the 5th scriptural expression of redemption. Since the question remains unresolved, we pour a 5th cup, but do not drink it. We call this the cup of the prophet Elijah, because when Elijah reappears to herald the coming of the Messiah, he will rule on all unanswered halachic questions, including this question, whether we should have a 5th cup of wine. Our custom thus has been to have 4 cups, right? And okay, at least one modern Haggadah suggests, following the rule of Maimonides, making the 5th cup optional, we should adopt it as our practice in gratitude for the reestablishment of the state of Israel. Interesting. Hold on half a second. I'm going to move you guys over here so I can. Okay. A person who never drinks wine, either because it is harmful to him or because he does not like it, should make a special effort on Pesach to drink from each of the 4 cups. Even children, when they have reached the age of being trained in the performance of religious commandments, should have a small cup of wine before them. So, you know, of course, we all believe that they can use grape juice and it would be just fine. Okay. Reclining is, you know, we kind of know about that. It's pretty straightforward. So this is interesting. The orchatz, the washing of the hands. You know, it's traditional, right? It's necessary. And we say a bracha. But here, opinions vary as to whether this washing of the hands is obligatory for all the participants or only for the leader of the Seder. So I've been to Seders where everyone has a bowl to wash their hands. I grew up where just the leader washed his hands. Most current Haggadahs, however, speak only of the celebrant washing his hands. This should not be a his, but we'll pass over that. One scholar has proposed that this is either based on an error, since the instructions in most Haggadahs are given in the singular, they were interpreted as referring only to the celebrant, or that it is sufficient if the leader alone performs the washing, since the practice is only the vestige of an ancient custom. But I'm sure you all have experienced this, that, you know, there are, for instance, at shul and stuff, there are washing stations for those who want to wash before they have a kiddush on, you know, Shabbat or a festival or whatever. So I think this really varies family to family. Okay. I love that this says karpas, okay? A piece of parsley or some other vegetable is given to each person at the table and dipped in salt water. It is eaten after we say the bracha. This practice is meant to arouse the curiosity of the children. It's like, okay, well, that you gave that high importance there. But here, historically, the dipping of the vegetable goes back to the fashion of eating meals a few thousand years ago. The meal began with hors d'oeuvre, right? An hors d'oeuvre or dish of a slightly pungent flavor steeped in some liquid of a similar nature. We'd call that an amuse-bouche, wouldn't we? Anyway.
Well, could you say that again?
Amuse-bouche. You know
No,
the
no,
phrase
it's
amuse-bouche? It's French. Oh, so an amuse-bouche is a very small appetizer. So at a certain restaurants of the last number of years, you know,
Like a bite.
they bring you something, the chef is giving you this, they bring it to, and it's a single bite. You put it in your mouth, it's one bite, it's called an amuse.
No good. That'll be helpful for going to Paris.
Right. So it's meant to awaken your palate, amuse and awaken your palate.
A tease. Okay, I got it.
Yes, here I'm teaching you something besides Hebrew.
Moose bouche.
Amuse bouche.
Oh, bouche
Okay.
is mouth, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's to amuse your mouth. This
Wow.
ultimately came identified with the bunch of hyssop, I don't know what this is, which was dipped in the blood of the first paschal sacrifice at the time of the Exodus and used for marking the doorways of the houses, right? Okay, so, I didn't know about these connections. Okay, yachats, you break the middle matzah, right? One portion is left where it is, the larger portion is wrapped, right? And we hide it as the afikomen. So I'm curious, people, excuse me, my household, my mother being when I was little, we only had one afikomen. I was the youngest child. And even if I found it, sometimes my sisters would steal it and rehide it from me. They would make things difficult for me. And at some point, my mother realized how unfair that was. So we all got the same thing, regardless of who found the afikomen. And usually it was, a small amount of money. Oftentimes, what I remember the most was we got Kennedy $50.
Yep. Yeah.
And except when Susan B. Anthony coins were issued, we all got Susan B. Anthony coins. In my seders, when we started having them at my house, maybe I'm just a giant pushover, but we would hide one for each kid at the table. So everybody got to do it. Yeah. My daughter has decided she's old enough now, she's 30. She's like, Mom, I'm not looking for an afikomen, so don't even go there. So that's fine too. But I also remember hearing stories of some kids at shul. They were good friends, very close friends, like extended family, close friends of a very dear friend of mine. And the bargaining they did with their Zadie at Passover, at the Seder, literally, were for tickets to see the Redskins, tickets to see the Senators. That was the baseball team at the time. Oh, and I'm sorry, I can't say Redskins anymore. Excuse me. That was their name at the time, the football team.
Commanders.
But we never bargained. It was like whatever they had ready is what we got. So
We never bargained either.
yeah. All right. Okay, so Magid is telling of the story, and we did a bunch of that last week, right? The story of the Exodus. Okay. So the Haggadah as a whole has two main divisions. The first contains most of the ceremonies and the recital of the historical and expository passages explaining the reason for the Seder celebration. The second part comes after the meal. Passages recited here are hymnal and glorificatory. That is a hard word to say. They glorify, okay? Also expressing our hopes for deliverance. Okay. All right, so I want to move on. Well, here, we'll get to it in a second. I want to dive into the plagues, actually. We talked about the 4 children, right? They call them the 4 sons, but we talked about that last week. I'm looking for So here, this is interesting. This, and we do this at my Seder. It's customary to start the Seder meal with a hard-boiled egg dipped in salt water. We did it that way for years. We literally had a teeny bowl, a small bowl with an egg cut into 4 beautiful, even-sized pieces in a bowl with salt water. So classic scholars recollecting the traditional description of a Roman meal consider the egg to be no more than a relic of the customary hors d'oeuvres of the typical meal of ancient times. It has been pointed out, however, that popular lore throughout the world generally associates eggs with the spring season, right? But so now they give it a fresh symbolic value. Various explanations in this vein have been offered. Eggs are a symbol of mourning. Round things are generally eaten in the house of mourning, and thus the egg at the Seder is said to be a gesture of mourning for the destruction of Jerusalem, added in place of the special festival offering, which can no longer be offered. This interpretation is emphasized by the fact that the 9th of Av always falls on the same day of the week as the first night of Pesach. Hence, the salt water at the Seder symbolizes the tears we shed over the destruction of the temple. Okay, so, all right, we're giving up on this because we're going to, okay, I want to talk about the plagues. This is an article, again, in the Jewish Theological Seminary website, a lovely article about, he calls it cover crop for a hardened heart. Anyway, he's doing this kind of a Devar Torah about the Parsha Vayera, which we read back in January, but it's still a lead up to Passover and about. So here's where I want to jump in. So the Parshat Vayera is the story of Pharaoh hardening his heart and the brutal drama of the plagues over Egypt. We see apocalyptic images of water turned to blood, swarms of insects, and piles of dead livestock, causing the entire land of Egypt to stink. Yet at the end of all of this drama are 2 verses about something seemingly minor. So we'll just read the English. Now the flax and barley were ruined, for the barley was in the ear and the flax was in bud. But the wheat and the spelt were not hurt, for they ripen late. So that's in Exodus chapter 9. These 2 verses describe the impact of the final plague of the Parsha, hail. So hail, I believe, is the 7th plague. They come in the short thaw between Pharaoh softening his heart for the first time, this Parsha, and hardening it again, where our Parsha ends. Why does our Torah mention these 4 crops? What do they have to do with the plagues or in the calculation of Pharaoh's change of heart? Okay, so this commentator claims that the word afilot, the adjective connoting late ripening, is connected to the word afel, meaning darkness. So this is, again, the root words in Hebrew are very important, and that we don't just take the Torah at face value. We kind of look at words, why this word, and we try to connect it up to something deeper. In his understanding, the wheat and the spelt were still underneath the soil in the dark, and therefore spared from the damage of the hail. We need this clarification here because earlier the hail was said to strike down all the grasses of the field. The survival of these crops is a miracle to Pharaoh. They are a minuscule part of his empire that was not exposed and destroyed, that was protected from the plagues. But it is a miracle that makes him turn away from the God of Israel. So Midrash Tahuma teaches that because the wheat and the spelt did not succumb to the hail, Pharaoh concluded that the authority of the God of Moses and Aaron did not extend to those 2 crops, thereby giving him reason to harden his heart again. This is why Moses was able to say that Pharaoh had not yet come to fear God because of what didn't happen to the wheat and spelt. Perhaps God spared these crops in order to encourage Pharaoh to remain obstinate, sparing one last sign of hope, a symbolic olive branch after the deluge of plagues. Rambam argues similarly, claiming that Moses uses this to negotiate with Pharaoh. The wheat and the spelt, which are Pharaoh's livelihood, have been spared, but it is within God's power to destroy them if you return and sin again before God. It is as if the God of Israel wanted to show Pharaoh he had no ground left to stand on. He could not deny God by clinging to these seeds in the ground. He could no longer turn away. Let's see. All right, so now we're going to go to another article on this here. Same Parsha, right? Vayera. This particular author, Rabbi Daniel Nevins, he's the dean of the rabbinical school, the Division of Religious Leadership. And this is a lovely article. God of wrath. God of wrath? There's a question mark there. There's an expression that is, he's talking about the same plague here, okay? This is what's important. Same Parsha, same plague. There's an expression that appears periodically in the popular press that annoys me to no end. The Old Testament God of wrath. How's that? God in the Tanakh vacillates between postures of patience and anger, justice and mercy. This nuanced and paradoxical portrait of God is evident throughout the Torah, most famously in Exodus chapter 34, verse 7, which describes God's enduring mercies and tenacious retribution within a single verse. Most Christian scholars have long since abandoned the polemical notion that the Hebrew Bible sees God primarily in states of fury. Still, this distorted depiction is ingrained in the minds of many writers, presenting us with the question of how the God of Israel is perceived from within and without the covenant. When reading Parsha Vayera, meaning I have appeared, it is easy to get caught up in the dramatic narratives depicting Moses' initial resistance to his prophetic mission, his early encounters with Pharaoh and the Egyptian wizards, and the increasingly deadly onslaught of the first 7 plagues. Yet the portion's deeper drama is discerned in its dual portrait of God. How is God perceived by Israel and Egypt, and how by the increasingly desperate Egyptians? Recall that by the end of last week's portion, Shemot, so again, this is back in January for us, the people of Israel didn't want to hear any more about their fabulous God. Ever since Moses arrived with his prophecies of redemption, their fate had devolved from dreadful to disastrous. But this week, so in Vayera, God's grandiose promises are matched with tangible demonstrations of his concern. Last week, God listened to Israel's cries, remembered his promises, looked at their woes, and understood. 4 verbs described the eternal process of God's perception. But this week, a string of 4 verbs describes God's active redemption of Israel from slavery. God is back in the game. The shift of Israel's perspective from enslavement to emancipation is matched by an upgrade in its theological nomenclature. The opening lines of our portion are meant to convey a deeper revelation of God's nature to Moses and Israel. Why the sacred name, I don't know how to say this. I say Yahweh, I never know, has been used regularly in the Torah since Genesis chapter 2. Here it refers to a new level of activist compassion in which God is prepared to intervene on behalf of Israel. The 7 plagues quickly clarify that the God of Israel is present, powerful, and poised to preserve his people. The covenant is not a hollow promise, but a road to redemption. In this parsha, God's appearance to Israel is radically transformed from a tease into a tower of strength. What about the Egyptians? What did they perceive about God? You can almost picture the smug smiles on their faces as Moses clumsily performs what appeared to be magic tricks. His staff becomes a snake. So do theirs. He bloodies the Nile. So do they. True, Pharaoh's wizards are better at replicating the plagues than at reversing them. No matter. God and his prophet initially seem to the Egyptians like just another magic act. Each plague induces a measure of panic in Egypt, but then the threat subsides, and as is common, people return to routine. So remember, I said last week that this actually takes place over a number of years, right? Growing up, I always thought, this is all like a couple of days, maybe it's 10 days. But no, this is going on over a long period of time. Okay, so they go back to their routine. However, this dismissive dynamic changes with the seventh plague, hail. Something about this plague is so overwhelming that it evinces a spiritual response in Egypt. Immediately after the hailstorm, Pharaoh summons Moses and Aaron and announces, "This time I have sinned. The Lord is righteous. I and my people are wicked." Sinned, righteous, wicked. This doesn't sound like Pharaoh. What's going on here? So this is actually what it says right in chapter 9, verse 27, right? Although this is not in any Haggadah I've read, right? So it's too much detail. It is tempting to say that by round 7 of the plagues, Pharaoh has decided that might makes right. Until now, he has shrugged off the Israelite threat. But if God can make the sky fall, then it is worth showing him some respect, perhaps. But why does Pharaoh integrate the religious language of Israel? If you read closely, there is a hint of something deeper developing in this narrative. This hail is an eerie admixture of fire and ice. This is the key. This is the real. The hail is streaming fire, eish mitlakachat, within the hail. It was very heavy, nothing like it had been seen in Egypt since it was established as a nation. How odd. Hail is made of ice, but this hail was mixed with fire. Midrash Shmot Rabbah calls it a miracle within a miracle. Remarkably, Pharaoh beseeches Moses to pray to the Lord, saying, "Too great are the divine sounds, kolot Elohim, and hail." Something has spooked Pharaoh. What? Open your Tanakh to Ezekiel chapter 1. This is one of the most opaque and mysterious descriptions of God ever captured by a prophet. There in verse 4, Ezekiel sees what Pharaoh saw, eish mitlakachat, streaming fire. He too is overwhelmed. Normally, fire evaporates water or is extinguished in the process, but this hail magically mixes fire and ice, a sight never seen on earth. In heaven, however, our ancestors noticed that fire, lightning, and water, rain and snow, coexist. This is how the sages interpreted the famous words of Job. God makes peace in the heavens, oseh shalom bimromav. There in the heavens, opposite elements can coexist, but on earth they battle each other. If so, then the hail is an unearthly incursion of fire mixed with ice that smashes into Egypt with great impact, first physical and then spiritual. Forget hail. Imagine hearing a tremendous crash and then seeing a meteorite sizzling in your backyard. Looking at this bizarre and frightening phenomenon, Pharaoh is startled not only into submission, but also into admission of God's wonder. The moment passes and more tragedy will unfold before Pharaoh and his army are destroyed. But in this brief interval, at the end of Vayera, the potentate of Egypt is on the verge of becoming a humble believer in God. At first blush, the plague narrative is simply an example of the victory of overwhelming force. I mean, that's right. That's what we kind of think as children when we do the 10 plagues. Upon reflection, we discern something different. Pharaoh is not only overpowered, he is stunned by the presence on earth of something formerly confined to the heavens. In Moses, he has met a messenger from God, who is the true master of the earth. For a fleeting moment, the Egyptian tyrant becomes aware that he is not Lord of the land. He encounters not a God of fury, but the maker of heaven and earth, before whom opposites coexist and distinctions dissolve. You can almost hear Moses, in anticipation of Shakespeare, saying, "There are more things in heaven and earth, Pharaoh, than are dreamt of in your philosophy." So I thought this was really enlightening. So I hope you agree. So where are we going to go from here? We skipped a few things. Let's go here. So oh, I'm sorry. Let's go here first. I have to move you guys over. Okay. So here's Kiddush, right?
It's
The tune for Passover Kiddush is a little different. It's and I didn't really appreciate this because I think I don't sing the traditional tune, but there is a traditional tune which I'm going to play for you. So I have to go back and forth because I don't think she has the words up. Okay, so see if she's loud enough.
Baruch atah Adonai,
She's here.
Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pari hagafen.
Oh, here we go.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol aham, v'ramemanu mikol hashon, v'kiddushanu b'mitzvotav. V'titen lanu Adonai Eloheinu v'yahava, moadim l'simcha, chagim uzmanim, tason, et yom chag hamatzot hazeh, zman cherutenu, mikra kodesh, sefer l'tziat Mitzrayim. Ki banu b'charta, v'otanu kidashta, mikol ha'amim, u'moadei kodshecha, v'simcha u'sason, hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai, Mikadesh Yisrael, v'hazmanim.
I think that's the end of that. Oh,
Baruch
look.
atah Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pari hagafen. Baruch
Sorry,
atah
I have to find her.
Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol aham.
Okay, so I don't have exactly the right sorry, the right slide for all of what she's doing, but this is still very good. So that's the tune. That's the traditional tune for Kiddush for Pesach. Do you guys feel I'm robbing you of your chances to read, or are you okay just following?
I'm fine with following.
Anyone else? Everyone's good? Okay. All right. So
The only thing I ask is that
sorry.
there's extra noise coming through, and sometimes it's a little distracting trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, okay. When I have you in when I'm sharing my screen, I can't mute everyone. So you guys have to mute yourself. I can potentially mute one by one, but I can't see all of you at the same time, so it's hard for me to figure it out. So thank you, Geraldine, for saying so. Okay, so we'll do some of the other brachot, okay? So we know that all right, so let's see if I was trying to make this go away, so maybe this will get bigger. Not sure if this is going to do it. Nope, that's not what we want. Oh. All right, we're leaving it. Sorry. You guys see okay? Okay, fine. All right. So the first washing of the hands is with no blessing whatsoever. Then comes our karpas, right? So, and in this, Debbie Lempert, lovely Debbie Lempert from Cincinnati, made this PowerPoint, and she says she uses a hey with a yud for Adonai here. Just want you to know. So Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri ha'adamah. So we use this generic borei pri ha'adamah anytime we're eating vegetables. So it's fruit of the earth, right? Fruits and vegetables. It's just a generic blessing. So that's, you'll see this at many other times during the year as well, but that's the generic for this section of the Seder. Yachatz, which we talked about, there's no bracha, you just split it and you leave one half and you put the other half to the side. I hope a child doesn't steal it before you hide it. Magid. So this is the Hebrew version, right? And it sounds like this: Ha lachma anya di achalu av hatana va'ara di Mitzrayim. Kol dichvin yete v'yechol, kol ditzrich yete v'yivsach. Hashata chacha l'shana haba'a va'ara di Yisrael. Hashata avdei l'shana haba'a b'nei chorin. So the English of this is the bread. In my Haggadah, it says affliction. Here it says destitution, that our ancestors ate in the land of Egypt. Anyone who is, we have hungry, here it says famished, should come and eat. Anyone who is in need should come and partake of the Pesach sacrifice. Now we are here. Next year, we will be in the land of Israel. This year, we are slaves. Next year, we will be free people. The crazy thing for me is I hear my dad read this. Whenever I read this, and he read it in Ashkenaz, not Sephardic, but in my head, I hear my dad reading this. That shows you the impact of doing something ritually year in and year out as a very small person to an adult, right? And I will say to you, I've told you this story before, that between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, two older gentlemen, old enough to be my fathers, in my shul and I, we would go to, we could blow shofar for anyone who couldn't come to shul, congregants and family members of congregants who may have been in the hospital, may have been, excuse me, in nursing homes or other communal residences. And there were a few of them who were on Alzheimer's wards and who were very unresponsive. But when they heard the shofar blown, some of them became responsive. To me, this is like that. Something about, that's so deeply ingrained in me that I literally hear my dad in my head when I read this at any time. Just now, I heard my dad. I have to not read this in Sephardic, in Ashkenaz. I have to tell myself that was the wrong pronunciation of how I was taught, but that's how I hear the word. So to me, that's a blessing to hear his voice in my head when I read this. Susan.
I do not ever remember from childhood this being read in Hebrew, and we don't read it in Hebrew where I currently go, but we do read the English. And like you, it's affliction, not destitution.
Well, so I was sharing with Marjorie before everyone came on that when I was a child, the first night of Passover, we did Hebrew and English. The second night of Passover was only in Hebrew. And we sat there, my sisters and I, very appropriately, dressed perfectly, as my dad did the whole thing in Hebrew, because he and my mom, that's what they were used to. So the first night was for us, we were the kids, but the second night was what they were used to. So at my Seder, some years we read it, I usually read it. So, and that's why I say it's a cherished memory and I have to read it. I have to hear my dad's voice, even though he's been dead now quite a while. Okay, so the 4 questions. Do you want me to play someone singing them or should we just read them? I can't hear anyone. You have to. I think singing
I think we should just read them.
I think Geraldine is singing. She wants me to sing them.
Singing is the way it's done. It's whatever.
This is true. All right. I'll give you a go. Ma nishtana halayla hazeh mikol halelot, mikol halelot, shebechol halelot, anu ochlin chametz umatzah, chametz umatzah, halayla hazeh, kulo matzah, halayla hazeh, kulo matzah, shebechol halelot, anu ochlin she'ar yirakot, halayla hazeh, kulo maror, halayla hazeh, kulo maror. Shebechol halelot ein anu matbilin, afilu pam echat, halayla hazeh, shtei be'amim, halayla hazeh, shtei be'amim. Shebechol halelot, anu ochlin, ben yoshvinu vein misubin, ben yoshvinu vein misubin, halayla hazeh, kulanu misubin, halayla hazeh, kulanu misubin. There you go. Susan, jump in.
Thank you.
When I was a little
Beautiful.
kid, my father taught me the 4 questions, but it wasn't with any repetition. And now because I've done it with repetition with religious school kids, I can't remember what he taught me. But
Ma, I'll
third
tell you what he,
question,
Susan,
I
Susan,
thought it was so funny, but the third question I thought was so funny that I kept laughing and he got so mad at me.
the
And
old,
I have no
you know,
idea why I thought it was funny.
does anyone remember when this repetition one started? Because I said the 4 questions at our family from when I was 5 until long after Josh was born, and I could finally get him to do it. But we did Ma nishtano halaylo hazeh mikol hefomim.
Well, so I have another here. Let's see if this is here. Let's play this one. So here, this is a Zax. Let's see how she's doing it. Well, that sounds like what I did.
Yes.
It says 2
That's
times.
what I did. Okay, so that's not helping us any.
The
Lenore,
one I did was a very old, it was the old tune. And it, to me, the new one is, I don't want to use the word wrong, but it's not my memory. And
Well-
when people do the new one with
what
repetition,
did I do?
I hear the old one in my head.
So, I'm 63 now, and this is how I was taught, and this is how my kids were taught too. I don't know another version to sing it.
Well, see, I'm 9 years older than that. So that may be,
That's the difference, because
That's-
I was taught, Susan, probably what you were taught.
Okay.
So I have a question.
we're just
I-
older.
I grew up unaffiliated, but my cousins and my late father's family was from the conservative movement. Is this a conservative movement driven thing? Or is it just a modern American? Because I've been doing it so long as an adult with conservative friends that it's hard for me to remember what it was,
Well, I was certainly, I've only ever belonged to synagogues affiliated with United Synagogue, which are all conservative.
I grew up kind of Orthodox, so it was conservative, but it was Orthodox.
Well, I was just going
You're
to say, I
conservative.
would have described the shul that I went to B'nai Israel back in the day as conservadox, because the rabbi and the chazan were pretty Orthodox,
Yeah.
but they were also European.
Yeah.
So, that goes back a long time.
I grew up in an Orthodox synagogue, And this is, and the tune that you sang today is the tune that I remember.
Okay. All right.
Susan, you and I have our memories.
Right.
What can I say?
Okay, so Dayenu, I assume is on, so Ilu Hotianu mi Mitzrayim, Hotianu mi Mitzrayim, Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. Ilu Natan lanu eta Shabbat, Natan lanu eta Shabbat, Dayenu, right? Ilu Natan lanu eta Torah, Natan lanu eta Torah, Dayenu, right? So a very easy song because you're getting more and more drunk as you go. And unlike Chad Gad Ya, which is a complete and total tongue twister that after people have had a lot of wine, I don't think anybody sings properly, but that's a different issue, right? This is much earlier in the story, right? All right. These are the symbols. We have the shank bone, the matzah, and the morer. And I will tell you a secret, if you guys haven't figured this out, it took me forever to figure it out, but I thank my dear friend Edna Schrank, who I know some of you know. I finally stopped throwing away my shank bone from year to year, and I just keep putting it back in the freezer and using it again. It's because the price of a shank bone has gone up astronomically around here. It used to be they gave them out for free.
Yeah,
Right.
sure they do.
Not anymore. Oh my God, the last 10 years here, I've had to pay for them.
Yes.
And some years they had a shortage. It's like you couldn't even get them. And Edna said to me, why are you throwing it away? Put it in the freezer. Take it out again. Heat it up again. Put it on the plate.
Yes, sir.
She's so right.
Well, remember it's Friday and I have class.
Okay, so let's see. It's 2 minutes before the hour. So here's the second hand washing, and here's the bracha. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu. So this is our whole usual beginnings, right? Al netilat yadayim. It's the same prayer whether you're washing your hands on Pesach or Shabbat or before any other meal. Same prayer. We're just using it here for this ritual. Okay. Motzi matzah. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. It's the same prayer. We're just substituted the flat one for the beautiful braided one. But then we add Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al achilat matzah. Because you commanded me to eat the matzah, this time that's how I'm going to do it. Al achilat matzah. Okay. So here, the matzah and the moreh together. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al achilat maror, because you commanded me to eat the maror. Now I say the bracha that way. And the last sandwich, there is no blessing. So, all right. Questions or other things you want to talk about? It's 10 o'clock. Yes, Geraldine. Can I stop sharing? Do you need the screen?
No.
Okay.
I was still waiting for the part where you tell us how to make gefilte fish so delicious.
I don't have, I am not the girl to tell you that. Here's why. I've never made gefilte fish. I've only bought it in a jar. Well, the women who I knew who made gefilte fish are no longer alive, and it was a multi-day process. What's Marlene chatting us? Let's see what you're saying. Oh, all right. We understand. Shabbat Shalom. If anyone here makes her own gefilte fish or has made it with family members, please chime in, but not me. I'm not. And also
made it alone, but I had a cousin who passed away, but she was a chef And I watched her make it once and decided I would never do that. I do remember my father's family, my grandmother and grandfather, talking about putting the carp in the bathtub. And I don't remember actually seeing the fish in the bathtub.
Do you know how many types of fish they put in their gefilte fish?
I think it could be up to 3 different fishes.
I think so. It's, yeah. And as I say, they would get them days in advance and they would have to prepare them. And then, so each one, I think, because it's a different kind of fish, got cooked a little differently for it to be its perfect, right? Cooked fish. And then
Ooh.
they would flake them and combine them, right? And then they would form them. And then they would chill them. It's a whole big process.
And then boil them in a big pot of water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Geraldine, do you like gefilte fish? Have you found one you like?
Not yet.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
I mean, I'm still fairly new, and I'm like, I tried.
What's the big deal? There's not,
well,
it's,
It's in the whole process is a little interesting for me. Because I was like, whoa, you want me to do what? And then you want me to make a sandwich out of this too? I don't know. But
well,
do you know who Michael Twitty is? He's a Black chef, Jewish chef who's been writing books and all this kind of stuff.
okay.
So I asked him about, and the people who knew me in the audience all turned around, looked at me because it was an anonymous question, but they all looked at me and they knew that. How do you make this little, tasty? He said, lots of hot sauce.
Well, that's what I was just gonna say. I grew up eating it with horseradish, of course.
Yes.
Because it doesn't have much taste on its own. And it's more just a texture than it is anything else. So it's what you put with it.
Lots of fresh cracked pepper.
There you go.
Well, I don't, I will have a little bit to say that I've had it. Thank you very much.
So, it's also, I think I've read a lot of recipes for Pesach. I've been trying to expand my horizons. And I think in Israel and in other Eastern European countries, it's very common. They serve lamb on Pesach, but we American Jews are not big fans of lamb, I don't think. So Akani, you make lamb for Pesach?
I make it either for Pesach or Rosh Hashanah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I love it, and I grill it.
Yeah, well, that's the only way I know how to make it is to grill it. Exactly. It's
yeah.
not easy to find a variety of kosher lamb meat products, is it? I mean, it's challenging. So my daughter was trying to convince me to change and I haven't set the menu yet, but to do this particular menu that she decided she really would like for a Pesach meal, for a Seder meal. And I said, the problem with it is that I need to grill that. And I can't be grilling outside when I'm sitting at the Seder table, and I can't grill it ahead and then serve it warm because too much time will have elapsed. So that doesn't make sense. And she's like, you're so stuck in the mud, mother. So, but this is why, in my opinion, most of us have the same meal, something that can be kept warm while we're sitting at the Seder table, right? And not futzing in the kitchen.
Right.
So, yeah.